springtime tips and fun facts from Paul, Kristen, and Dexter at Total Wine & More.
Did you know there were over 1 million bubbles in a glass of champagne? Did someone say brunch?
Leave the egg hunting to the kids. We'll have even more fine hunting for your brilliant brunch Riesling.
Ham's sweet and salty richness pairs perfectly with sweeter wines with bold fruit. How about a juicy Pinot Noir?
Whether you're hosting or just bringing the wine, Total Wine & More has you covered with 8,000 wines, 3,000 spirits, and 2,500 beers at always low prices. Cheers!
Internet! It's a new day, yes it is! Feel the power of Damn You Hollywood! And here's your host, the new World Wrestling Entertainment Heavyweight Champion of the World, Robert Winfree! Feel the power!
I'm not entirely sure how insulted I should be by that.
What? I was doing a little Kofi Kingston there for you. A little new day.
Yeah, and look.
It's a new day. Yes, it is.
It's a new day for a week and a half until he drops the belt.
You know, some of us didn't watch WrestleMania last weekend. Just saying.
No, the whole... Look, don't you pay attention to the advertising? The whole world watches. It's what the world is watching.
I didn't actually watch the vast majority of it. I just got the results and saw a few clips.
You gonna host the show here or what?
I mean, I can flip a coin and find out. Hang on. Sorry, folks. This is Damn You Hollywood on the Radulich and Broadcasting Network. I am Robert Winfree. The man doing my introductions. The man doing my introductions and somehow manages to be less interesting on the mic than even Xavier Woods, who is a giant burlap sack of wet hay.
Yes, I am.
And we have joining with us tonight as we review the latest entry into the DC Extended Universe, Shazam! Exclamation mark. Apparently the punctuation is very, very important to the title of the movie.
Hang on, go back a second. If I'm the Xavier Woods, because I did the announcement, and I made you Kofi Kingston, does that make Alexis Hana from Kansas City, Missouri, Big E? Can you do a split, Alexis?
No.
I mean, look, we don't actually have a Big E. We just have a rotating cavalcade of people who come on to suffer alongside of us.
Hi, Alexis. How are you?
Let's just say I'm the person at the Spanish announcer's table who knows that the table is going to be broken at least 3 times before the end of the match.
I was going to bet you were the German announcer who gets Seth Rollins torpedoed into him but then sticks out the rest of the broadcast.
Yeah, you can't... Here's the thing with the Spanish announce table. It can only be broken once. Once it's kind of like Daffy Duck, you know, when he does the devil routine. He can only blow himself up once, though it's a great trick. They don't reset up that Spanish announce table. Once Seth Rollins goes through it, that's the end of it. Now you can.
Okay, fine. I'm the Spanish announcer, just saying, make it quick.
Terrific.
Anyway, again, as mentioned tonight, we will be reviewing Shazam. Again, the exclamation mark seems to be important. And, I mean, given how much grief I've given at least 2 of the Star Trek movies for removing the colon from their titles and thus making the titles hilarious and stupid, I suppose fine. If you want to punctuate and make a stink about it, go ahead. This is the latest entry into the DC Extended Universe, Cinematic Universe, whatever they're calling it. And I mean, it's a thing.
Are you distracted? What's wrong with you?
I have nothing to say.
Okay, seriously, I thought I was going to be the one that was going to have to be quiet for most of the time because I'm still waiting on my freaking dinner to get here, but come on.
I don't really have anything for this. This is a giant, nothing of a movie to me.
Okay, you could just introduce the subjects and move us along here.
Fair enough.
You seem like you're struggling to do shtick. You could just not do shtick.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, do you need me to do a plot synopsis?
No, I got it. There's normally some other bit we can kind of sneak in before I actually get to the plot synopsis to amuse the listeners and ourselves.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know you were trying to be Red Letter Media. Bop.
Hey, look, if we had even 1/4 of their subscriber base, I'd do it.
If we had 1/4 of their subscriber base, I'd have gotten a bigger check than $11 last week.
If we had half their subscribers, you guys could actually pay me.
There you go.
Nah.
Yeah, first things first.
All right. So, in the absence of actual stick and gimmicks on my part, your plot synopsis for Shazam! Exclamation point. We open in 74? Okay.
I thought it was 6.
74.
This thing says
74.
74. It doesn't. Look, there was no earth-shattering change between 74 and 76. It could have been 76. In fact, why wasn't it 76?
I was born in 76.
Your point being?
It's an earth-shattering change.
No. Or at least to date, it has not been proven as such.
Moving on.
Thank you.
1974, we are introduced to Thaddeus. I could never really get behind how they pronounce this guy's name. Savannah,
yeah.
Savannah. Young kid with money. I mean, his family's wealthy. That seems to be his superpower because money solves everything. He is transported
because money changes everything.
He is magically transported to the Rock of Eternity, where he meets Jimon Hansu, whose entire... I imagine Jimon Hansu will be in at least 4 more of these DC movies and will just always be the guy who shows up for less than 10 minutes of screen time and then dies.
What's a hell of a gig, man?
I mean, he's done it for at least 1 Marvel movie as well. So you...
2 Marvel movies. He was also in Captain Marvel.
He was... he didn't die, though.
No.
But yeah,
he couldn't die because that's a prequel, and he dies in Guardians of the Galaxy. Spoilers!
Anyway, we meet him. He is searching for a champion to be the receptacle of his wizard's power. Look, if they hadn't actually, within the context of the movie, made all the gay jokes about that, I don't know what I would have done, but since they already made them, I don't care. So he offers the power to Thaddeus if Thaddeus can prove himself pure of heart and resist the temptation of the 7 deadly sins. He can't. He is then told, "You will never be worthy," and blasted back into his car, where he pitches a fit about losing out on the opportunity to become an all-powerful magical being, gets his family into a car wreck that paralyzes his father, and Shazam laments the fact that he cannot find one person pure of spirit, and speaks to his magical spell, encouraging it to continue doing what it's doing. Fast forward to the present day, where we get to meet Billy Batson, a foster kid who tricks a couple of Philadelphia police officers so he can use their computer. Again, he's a foster child looking for his biological mother, who got separated from him at a festival of some variety. They never specify what the event is, but it is a carnival kind of thing. He goes up. The address he gets for someone with the last name of Batson in this instance is most certainly not his mother. He gets arrested because he, a few weeks previous, had escaped from a foster home in Pittsburgh, and quite frankly, just getting out of Pittsburgh is a good idea. Although Philly's probably the only city in that state that's a downgrade. He is still in the foster care system. He's given to a couple that actually are shown to be genuinely decent human beings who have a few other foster kids. They what is it, a group home that they run? Yeah.
They're former foster kids themselves, so they're reaching out to kids who went through what they went through.
And it's just good people genuinely trying to make the world a better place. I applaud that in all sincerity. Billy is stuck rooming with Freddy, who's a bit of a superhero nerd. Fanboy extraordinaire.
Freddy's pretty much what I have come to my table every weekend at Comic-Con.
He's an enthusiast. I
mean, if you wanted to go highbrow, you'd call him an aficionado.
Yeah, you know what? That would be accurate.
It would also be doing his annoying bits of dialogue a severe disservice. Billy doesn't really take to this place. He is convinced that his mother is still out there and that he's not actually an orphan of some variety. He just needs to find her and life will be well again. So as he's trying to settle in, there's interactions with him and the rest of the family, everyone at school. We also get to see now Professor Thaddeus Sivana, who is a physicist of some variety, I believe, who has spent his life trying to get back to the Rock of Eternity, where Shazam exists, and finally is able to crack... Look, the guy stumbled through the magical barrier into Hogwarts and now just really wants to go back. He is able to finally crack the code. A lot of his attempts had been previously hampered by the lack of a certain magic symbol that he now discovers, and he is able to travel to the Rock of Eternity. He steals the... isn't that a specific thing? I don't think they ever name it, but there is this... they call it the Eye. It's some magical artifact that allows Shazam to keep the 7 deadly sins locked in stone in statue form.
I'm looking it up.
He gets it, and...
it's just the Eye of Sin.
The Eye of Sin, okay. He gets the Eye of Sin, forcefully jams it into his own, replacing one of the eyes, and the sins give him powers. They are now freed. He then leaves to wreak what havoc he will on the world, first and foremost, like you do, going and murdering your father and brother and all of the poor schmucks who are just stuck around in the same meeting at that particular time. Now, with the sins released upon the world and Shazam convinced they will do untold damage as they have in the past, his spell designed to find someone worthy of receiving his power decides that it's Billy's turn to show up. Billy shows up. There's no test anymore because the sins are now gone, so he can't actually test his heart, and he just comes to the conclusion that, Billy, you may not be a genuinely good person or pure of heart, but you're apparently the best humanity can offer at the moment, so good luck to you. He transfers his power into Billy, who transforms from a scrawny 14-year-old into Zach Levi in a muscle suit whenever he says Shazam. He returns from the Rock of Eternity to the normal plane of existence. It's never quite clear whether the Rock exists in our dimension or not. I think it doesn't, but I could be mistaken. He doesn't really know what's up with his new body. He discovers his powers that include a form of flight, the ability to shoot lightning. extreme physical resistance, super strength, super speed, all the major hits. And for someone who was expressly gifted the wisdom of Solomon, he's kind of a dumbass. He discovers that he can transform between his two forms by saying Shazam. He sets up a few scams utilizing both his new body, the fact that he looks like Zach Levi, a man in his mid-30s. He uses this for his own profit. He does a few bits of superhero goodness, but mostly it's fixing things he screwed up to begin with, such as blowing out one of the tires on a bus and then catching said bus when it falls off of an overpass. He and Freddy have a couple of fights over this because Freddy wants him to be a better person and is also horribly, horribly jealous. So again, there's friction. Mark Strong as Thaddeus Savina shows up, and he is warned by the Sins that the Wizard has chosen a champion, and if this champion ever discovers his true power, he's the only one who can stop us. Never mind that this is canonically the same universe wherein both Superman, Aquaman, Batman, The Flash, and others do exist.
All right, minor point of contention. Superman is affected by magic.
I didn't say he was impervious to it. I said I take umbrage with the notion that Superman could not stop them.
Look
okay, fair enough. That's a minor squibble.
To say if we're going to be here all night talking about why certain superheroes don't show up in other superheroes movie if we open up this can of worms. And I think that the Russo brothers went on long enough explaining why no one else showed up to help Captain America and Black Widow in Captain America Winter Soldier. So I suggest we move on.
Well, technically, go on.
Actually. So he is now looking for this individual who has the power of the Wizard. He wants it transferred into himself, and then he will be all-powerful and able to rule the world. And he's going to start with a city where people legitimately ate horse crap to celebrate a sports victory. Just saying, there's better cities he could choose as a seat of power. He encounters Shazam. They fight a few times. He's clearly stronger at the moment, so Billy has to escape using cowardice and, trickery. Which, I mean, hey, you work with what you got. If you can't overpower someone and you can sneak away from them, go for it. Billy's secret is discovered initially by not only Freddy, but one of the other kids there, Darla. The others figure it out using their Holmesian-like detective powers, by which I mean they see plenty of videotape of Freddy arguing with the Red Cyclone / Shazam / Captain Marvel / boy, we really should have rethought naming this character. And they all realize that he's the superhero, and they help him find where his mother actually is. Explain that he could never find her because she reverted to using her maiden name, and his father is in jail in Florida for something, and Mark is personally making sure that he never gets out. He's just not signing those psych waivers.
Presently on suicide watch.
Yeah. So he's able to go see his mother, who reveals that, you didn't so much get lost as you got lost, and then I kind of went, you know what? We're both better off. And he is understandably distraught by all of this. He leaves to reconnect with his foster family, but hey, the bad guy shows up, as they are wont to do in emotionally charged moments in your character's journey. They fight again. This time Shazam does a little bit better. He also realizes that the primary weakness of the current setup that Sivana has, his power derives from the fact that these demons, the Sins, are possessing him. He can make them manifest in the physical world, but whenever he makes all of them manifest, he loses all of his superpowers. So Billy / Shazam, struck by inspiration and remembering some words that the actual wizard Shazam shared with him, is able to use his power to share his abilities with his foster brothers and sisters, turning them into also Shazams. And at this point, the number of bodies necessitates that Sivana commit the vast majority of his demonic possessors to the battlefield, where they all fight. Shazam personally lures out Envy as the last one that was possessing Sivana in a really impressive display, because everyone forgets at least one of the 7 deadly sins, and he remembered all of them, so kudos. He draws him out. This removes all of the actual magic power from Mark Strong. He then yanks the Eye of Sin out of his head, which I'm sure was just wonderful for the structural integrity of his face and skull. Forces the sins back into the Eye of Sin. He and his other superhero brothers and sisters are celebrated. They return to the Rock of Eternity, put the sins back in their prison, realize that they have a lair to operate from. They go back to the real world and begin there's a few gags I'm skipping over that we can get to individually if you want, but they go back to the real world and resume living their lives to the best ability that they have. Again, there's a few things I know I'm skipping over, possibly even forgetting, but that's the emotional thrust of the movie is that this disenchanted runaway orphan Billy Batson finally accepts those who are trying to love him and bring him into their lives, and that power is much better when you have someone to share it with that improves everyone's lot in life. And the actual last shot of the movie before the first credits roll pays off in a bit of gaggery from earlier when Billy shows up at school as Shazam to make one of his to make Freddy look cool, and then reveals that he brought Superman along as well. Really, that just annoyed me because I imagine the first meeting between Shazam and Superman was probably funnier than almost anything in this movie, and we just kind of shortcut around it for the sake of the Superman suit, not even Henry Cavill's face, mind you, appear on screen, which I'm going to be so sad when they recast him because he was so good as Superman. But that is Shazam! Exclamation mark. All right, Mark, I don't really have a whole lot to say about this, all that positive or negative. This just exists for me. You seem to have a much better time with it, so I'll start with you if you don't mind.
Yeah, we don't need to go into a Dumbo-esque at-length dissertation on this thing. Let me say that I thought, first of all, I really enjoyed the film. I thought it was very well made. I thought it was a love letter to superhero films, which is really funny considering that it was done by DC, the people who gave us Batman v Superman.
No. Look, if you're gonna cite their worst movie, you just cite Justice League, man. Look, you and I both.
Hang on.
Batman v Superman.
Look, you take a throwaway line and then you go to town on it. Here's why I didn't say Justice League. Justice League was a mess of a production. Zack Snyder had BVS in his hand and an extra year, and it still turned out to be what it was. You really can't compare them. In any case, the relevant point and the point that I was trying to make was that, for a company that has really been struggling, this is the third. I can't say in a row because Justice League followed Wonder Woman, but Wonder Woman was an excellent film and got the train back on track. Justice League was, unfortunately,
excellent's a bit of a stretch, but
Justice League, had its problems. They'd have been better off not making it.
Apparently, just minor tangent about that.
Why?
Because you mentioned Justice League needing. You just mentioned Justice League needing reshoots. One of my brothers took the Warner Brothers Studio Lot tour a couple of weeks ago, and their tour guide talked with them a little bit about that movie. Apparently, they spent about $600 million on reshoots.
And so then you have Aquaman, which was fantastic, and all that if you want to go check out our review of that, I talked about how, it was a great fantasy film and kind of like Flash Gordon underwater. This is sort of, Shazam continues the trend of at least singularly hero-focused, movies that have been done well by this studio, and I'm hoping to see this trend continue.
In fairness, even Man of Steel is a pretty good movie. You and I have both gone, not perfect, mind you, but you and I have both defended it as we believe it is necessary to do so on occasion. What
I liked about Shazam, I use the term love letter, is that it really does. Here's what I was afraid of, and I think this is why I have such a glowing review of this thing. I was afraid this was going to be a parody of the superhero film. That this was going to be, let's take all the tropes and have fun with them, but going to cross over into making fun of them. I don't believe this film does that. I think it takes a lot of those tropes, but there's a healthy dosing, obviously, of mixing it up with this idea of this premise of what if we took a teenage kid and gave him the powers of Superman, what would happen? How would he act? What would he do? The theme of your family, the family, isn't just who you're blood related to, but it's those people who care about you in your life and all of that. I liked the message of the movie. The CGI, Rob picked at it. Rob picked at it earlier.
Let me be very clear about this. Not only are the sins bad, there's at least 2 scenes of Shazam flying that just made my eyes bleed. The one where he flies through the mall is so awful. It is none
of it really took me out of the movie. Again, I didn't. There's not enough CGI in the movie for me to where, at least that I could recognize where it looked too. I said we were talking about this before, and I said that the 7 Deadly Sins, they looked really cartoonish. And one could harp on the CGI not looking great in those scenes, but again, this had a very kid friendly aesthetic to it, which, given the audience of who was going to go see this movie, I'm not surprised by, and I don't think is necessarily a bad thing. The CGI, to me, there's kind of a window of how bad CGI can be before it gets too bad that it ruins the movie. I don't particularly mind it if it looks cartoonish in a movie as lighthearted as this one was intending to be. The entire theater cheered, and I along with them, during the end sequence when he figures out that this is power to be shared, and he turns the group kids into the Marvel family. I thought it was great. I thought it was a great way to end the film. I liked Mark Strong as the villain. We talk a lot on here about the motivations of villains. And you have a guy who has a dalliance with power and is told you're not worthy, and makes it his mission in life to get back to that place. I like that. There was no blue laser in the sky. There was no over complicated plot to it. It was just a guy wanting to get the power that he was denied back. Period. And his whole reason for dealing with Shazam is that he that was power that he wanted as well. That was that was the wizard's power. So it was great. They've already greenlit a sequel to it, and as a side thing, they're doing a Black Adam movie, which they alluded to at the beginning of the film. In case people didn't pick that up, the hero who turns bad and kills millions of people is Black Adam. I would have loved to have seen instead of Zach Levi, I would have loved to have seen John Cena in the role, just because at some point it would have been funny to me to see John Cena versus The Rock on screen. I would have even settled if John Cena was Freddy's adult Shazam body, but alas, they did not cater to the wrestling fan out there. Instead, we had the black chick. Oh gosh, who's the I got to give her credit. Who's the actress that played her, the adult her?
Megan Good.
Megan Good. She's hysterical and probably one of, other than the main, the main cast of that scenario, of that whole scene. She was my favorite part of the movie, especially when she started telling Santa Claus she's been a good girl. I was dying laughing.
She did save Santa Claus.
She did. When
she's like, and I've been so good, he's just staring at her. Like, what?
It's so great. No, she, of the little bit that you get to see the Marvel family interact with their powers, I thought she did the best with it. There's not a lot of critical there's not a lot of criticism I can come up with for the elements of craft of this movie. Philadelphia looks like Philadelphia. It's supposed to be this. It's supposed to be this sort of out of sorts, magical, fantastic thing happening in a very, very real place. With real breath coming out of people when they talk because it's cold, and real snow and real dreariness. And I thought that aesthetic worked. So I'm going to pass it over to Alexis here for her thoughts.
Yeah, sorry I was so quiet there. I was eating dinner because it finally showed up.
No, geez, I appreciate somebody on this podcast being quiet so I could finish the thought. Go ahead.
Okay, fair enough. No, I really did enjoy this. I thought Zach Levi was absolutely perfect in the role. I went to see it with a friend of mine. I said I loved it because he and the kid who played young Billy, they just really capture the same amount of energy and wide-eyedness. I had no problem believing that they were the same character. I love Mark Strong as a villain. He always plays a really good one. I'll even go out on a limb and say he was probably the only redeemable thing about the Green Lantern movie.
He was in that piece of crap?
Yeah, he was Sinestro.
Was he really?
Yeah, he was Sinestro.
The fact that his career survived that is a testament to how hard he works and across how many different types of film.
I'll give you that. No, but I thought the villain was a little lackluster, but I did a little research. Dr. Sylvan in the comics has absolutely no character whatsoever. He is literally, I'm an evil scientist, and I'm going to do evil, and I'm evil. He's that character. He is total pre-crisis Lex Luthor. I'm doing this just because I want to kind of character. So I understand they didn't really have a lot to go with. But you do understand where he's coming from. You do feel the pain that he goes through when he's a kid. And not only is he rejected by the wizard, but then he goes back and he's got his abusive father and brother there who are insulting him to boot. I mean, yeah, that's got to hurt. So you do get where he's coming from. There was a little CGI. And I'm usually the one to support that kind of stuff. But yeah, the sins did look a little cartoony. I mentioned earlier before we started the show, I do kind of wish they had given them a little more distinction, because when you're watching them all together, you know which one is greed because you see him attack the father separately. You know which one is gluttony. I think I know which one was wrath. But other than that, I could not tell. Like in the scene when the Marvel family is fighting them at the Christmas carnival thing, I had no idea who was fighting who.
Did it matter? Let me take the opposing point of view here. They were fighting a group of monsters. Did it matter that you couldn't identify each particular identity?
It's just more me as a stickler for visuals. It's just something I would have liked. You're right. It's not crucial and it's not a deal breaker, but it's something that I personally would have enjoyed more.
If they had done, here's where I think you could be right. If they did more with them in respect to their individual powers, like the only one they really do that with is gluttony, and that's and he turns into Audrey too and has a big giant mouth and tries to eat people. But I
overheard about you guys having to play Audrey 2 music last night. Let's not go through that again.
No. We're not going to get sidetracked with the alternate ending to Little Shop of Horrors. My point being that
where he eats the world,
if each sin was doing something relative to its name to hurt people, then it would make more sense for them to be identified individually. But if everyone's just sort of biting and scratching and clawing and there's no difference between the monsters, then, again, why? Who cares if you can't tell them apart, other than the visual aesthetic?
I'll give you that. I was kind of surprised we didn't get a Black Adam teaser, since Dwayne Johnson is an executive producer for this film. I knew we were going to get a mid. I was told in advance there's a mid-credits scene, and it's going to set up the sequel. I was convinced that Black Adam was going to come get Dr. Sivana out of jail. But nope, we get Mastermind.
Mister.
Mastermind? Is that it?
Yeah.
Yes.
He is literally, like, his last name is Mind.
He's basically a giant psychic caterpillar.
Correct. Only he's not giant. He's a regular sized caterpillar.
He's fairly big for a caterpillar. I mean, I don't know. That thing's about as big as a caterpie, and caterpies are fairly decent size. When I think caterpillars, I think they could fit on your finger. Mr. Mind cannot fit on your finger. In your hand, maybe.
Okay. We shall not quibble about the size of caterpillars. Let us say he was not one of the worms from Dune. He was just, an itty bitty thing.
Okay, fair enough. Squishable under the foot. How about that?
There we go.
Yes, he was squishable.
Not outside the statistical average.
Okay. There is a lot of tropes that they do kind of poke fun at, but again, you're looking at the idea of a teenager getting these powers for the first time and just running crazy with them. I mean, you have scenes where he goes to a little convenience store and he's like, I want to purchase some of your finest beer. It's like, of course. The minute that a teenager thinks they can get away with it, that's what they're going to do. He goes into a strip club because he thinks he can get away with it. I just love that he's running rampant with it because that is exactly what a teenager would do the minute they got these powers.
Let me go ahead and piggyback onto that. Sorry, I my thoughts were not cohesive earlier. I was a little all over the place, and I forgot I wanted to mention that they spent what wins with this movie. What is successful about this movie is the fact that they had a gimmick. A kid gets Superman powers, and they really could. And it's that. The trick in creating a great movie was how long they spent on that gimmick versus telling a story. And I thought, and all that stuff is in the trailer, pretty much. And thankfully, they didn't overdo it, which is what I was afraid of. I was afraid that this was going to be 2 hours of him screwing around and being, doing nonsense with his powers, and 20 minutes of him being a hero. I thought that they struck the right balance between, the right balance between him abusing his powers and him being responsible with them, which was really where the shoulders on which this movie rests. If they didn't get, and feel free to chime in here, with your thoughts on this in particular. But if they had gotten kind of the ratio wrong, I think the movie falls apart.
I agree.
But I think they nailed it.
No, I agree. I think you're absolutely right. I think that he does kind of figure things out at the right moment, not too late and not too soon. They do. I do love some of the tropes to make fun of. I could not stop laughing during the scene where they're hovering in the air over Philadelphia, and Sylvana's making his big dramatic monologue, and you realize they're about a mile apart, and Shazam cannot hear a word he says, and oh my god, I died. I'm just here going, yeah, why has that not come up before? That was great.
That was very funny. That might have gone a little too long for me, but I mean, it's a minor quibble.
Mm-hmm. Now, I am glad we got to see the Marvel family. I like that they incorporated the characteristics of the kids into the adults, down to the Asian kid who was a video game addict actually shouting Hadouken when he fired off a lightning blast.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
That was awesome.
I think one quibble about that is I don't think they gave the eldest girl much to do. Like, the black girl got the most.
By which you mean nothing? Because she doesn't actually do anything other than throw, look, Ronda Rousey's actual punches and her professional wrestling punches both look like crap, and they still look better than what she was throwing at that CGI'd monstrosity in the background of a couple of different scenes after she becomes a superhero.
I was going to say they gave the Mexican kid at least an opportunity to save the people on the Ferris wheel, They gave plenty for what's his face, Freddy, to do. The black girl steals the entire scene, and there was nothing left for the lead white girl, which I thought was kind of weird, but just an observation.
I can give you, but I think she also had one of the most developed personalities before the transformation. The way we see her, getting into college, when she's trying to figure out if she really wants to leave her family or not. She does spend the most time outside of Freddy with Shazam. So
I wasn't also crazy about the adult version of her, but in comparison to her, first of all, I thought that actress was shorter. Like, everyone kind of shoots up, and she's the only one either about the same height or is shorter. You're telling me you couldn't find a taller, more like fitness model type chick for that role for the few minutes you were going to need her? It just seemed like a really odd choice.
Well, in moderate defense of that point, the others are much younger characters. I mean, Billy and Freddy are probably the second oldest, and they're 15. She's 18, basically. She's applying to colleges. So the fact that her, for want of a better expression, perfected form, or idealized kind of, is not that much different from where she is now in certain physical characteristics makes sense. By contrast, a shorter, very heavy-set 14-year-old in the Mexican, Pablo, I believe his name was.
Pedro.
Thank you.
Whatever.
Shoots up. He shoots up a foot in height,
right? Sure.
And buffs out.
Yeah, same thing with the Asian kid. I mean, and I see your point. There isn't as many miles for her to go to be an adult version of herself. I just, film being a visual medium, everybody, you get the idea with 4 out of 5 of them, and then you look at her and you're like, well, I don't. It looked awkward, I guess is my point, at least in my view. But it's one of those things where this is why I didn't spend a lot of time with this when I first started talking about it. It was awkward looking when I first saw it, but its awkwardness is outweighed by the fact that was an emotional moment. So who cares? It's more important that it happened at all versus how it happened and what shape it took.
Okay, for the record, because I didn't really want to interrupt you when you said "so who cares," I put my hand up because that kind of crap does actually matter to me.
Yeah. I think there's also the fact that we wanted to see. I think the audience as a whole wanted to see more of how the kids turned adults acted. Again, we wanted to see Darla, the little black girl, as an adult, telling Santa what she wants on her Christmas list. We want to hear the Asian kid spouting off video game catchphrases. We want to hear the Latino kid being like, what was it? He's like, whoa, check out these guns. And he's poking at his muscles. That kind of dialogue, I think, is more what we want than out of a 17 or 18-year-old who basically grows up about 5 years at once.
If that. So, again, I think we got more humor and everything out of the other characters, so I'm going to put my hands up in the air and say, whatevs. Right. Okay. I mean, I don't want to belabor the point. Is there anything else on this? I mean, I think this was a wild success for DC. We'll talk about financially where it landed in just a few minutes, but, as far as there was a video that I was watching where they're kind of taking the James Bond approach now to these DC movies, which is they all live in the same universe, but they're not really going to connect all that much, and they're really not building from one. This is not the Marvel formula. These are not chapters in a book. This adventure is over, and the next time you see them again, it'll be a brand new adventure. Which I can certainly appreciate. I think it gives a little bit more freedom to the directors and the writers to concoct their own stories. More so than I think some like the Edgar Wright kind of complaining with or Josh Whedon complaining with Marvel, where because you have to operate within this overall story they're telling, you don't have a tremendous amount of freedom. Though the Russo brothers seem to have figured out what works here. Hey,
actual talent can find a way to work within reasonable constraints. You'd have thought.
You don't like Edgar Wright?
Yeah, 50-50.
Are you calling him a talentless hack?
Look, I'm about 50-50 on Edgar Wright. Leave it at that.
All right.
I think Eddie's in the background disagreeing with you on that.
It's all right. Look, Eddie, if you enjoy the comedic stylings of Edgar Wright, Godspeed and party on, man.
Hey, you want to add anything?
Personally, I'm 50-50 on it.
Okay. You were very excited while I was giving my my review. Is there anything else you want to add, Robert, before we move on?
No. I mean, hang on. Let me rephrase. Very briefly. I think your analysis is largely correct, the both of you. I think you're right about the ratio between goofiness and heroics that this thing had to strike. I think they could have done a little bit more visually with Mark Strong's character. He seems to just... I don't know, he lacks a little visual flair. And if you're going to go with a little bit more of the very colorful, kind of cartoony approach, there's probably a little bit more they could have done with him.
Don't you think, though, that that he needed to be drabbed by contrast?
No. I think...
I'm sorry. I think that Savannah is... I'm okay with him being a little more downplayed because, in a way, I think he's not really meant to be the true adversary of the film. The main adversary for Billy and Shazam is for to accept that he has a family with the foster group and to accept help and to accept that there are people out there who love him. I think it's kind of like Caecilius in Doctor Strange. You know, Caecilius is the bad guy, but he's not the main challenge to the main character. That's something completely different.
Yes, it's Doctor Strange's hands that are the true villain.
Oh, I almost forgot. We got to talk about the homage to Big.
Yeah, that's the only other thing I was going to bring up is when they're fighting through that toy store and they step on the pianos on the ground. In a very obvious and deliberate homage to Big. The famous scene in there when Tom Hanks and Robert Loggia play chopsticks on the, walking keyboard.
I'm going to send you guys a quick picture. Somebody put this together, which I think is hilarious, but it relates to what we're talking about here. I guess the reason why I didn't bring up the whole thing about Big was I kind of thought, like, the whole movie is an homage to Big. It's just, Big with superhero powers.
Well, that is kind of what it is. I mean, Shazam and Billy Batson have been around since the 1940s. People forget that, Shazam is a crucial member of the Justice League. He's been around forever.
I mean, look, let's be clear. He's the more important Captain Marvel in each of their respective comic book universes.
Ow. Actually, although I will give you this, I was talking to someone today and they were saying that they didn't know who Shazam was, and I said, well, he was Captain Marvel. I'm like, oh, that was Captain Marvel. There is a bit of a hiccup because I think a lot of people remember there's a Captain Marvel on the Justice League. They keep forgetting that he's not Captain Marvel anymore.
Yeah, what was it, a couple of years ago that DC officially changed his name to Shazam?
Something like that, yeah.
Here's the limitation with, and I was thinking about that. Let's go to the sequel where he's doing, he's going on Fox News and Good Morning America. Like, what's your name? Shazam. Ah, crap. Like, he can't say his own name. He's got to come up with something else. I'll be curious to see if they actually run with Captain Marvel. That his name is not Shazam. That his name is Captain Marvel because he can't say it. He can't say Shazam without transforming.
That would genuinely. I mean, I would do it just for the hilarity.
That did lead to some great scenes. Like, he's Mr. Sparkle Fingers. No, he's not. He's Mr. Philadelphia. That's a cream cheese. There was really some great.
No, I only laughed. I think and laugh is a loose term for what I did. It was a chuckle at best. This movie did not tickle my funny bone by and large, which is just my sense of humor. It's not an indictment on the film as such. But
no, it's an indictment on your funny bone.
Look, my sense of humor is my sense of humor. It's odd, I know. But I did get a chuckle out of the we're a mile apart monologuing at each other bit. That is...
Yeah, that was good.
That was really good. I chuckle... the fact that they could never figure out what his name was going to be and it just kind of became a running gag was... I appreciated it. And, oh, God...
I did like the Red Cyclone, nice little homage to Red Tornado, another Justice League member. And I love that for every shirt Freddie wears is a geek shirt that I have seen sold at every Comic-Con I've worked. Like I said, every word out of Freddie's mouth. I'm like, yep, sounds familiar. I have kids who come up to my table and they don't stop talking, and they sound exactly like this.
Yeah, I know. Oh, I remember the other thing I chuckled at when they were trying to sneak out of school, and Billy tells them, "I can play innocent, you can't." And then they walk past the security guard, and the security guard looks at Freddie and goes, "You look like you're up to something."
Okay, that was funny. And then he runs around the corner, whispers Shazam, and then comes back covered in a trench coat.
In a trench coat.
Totally acts. It's like, yes, this is the security guard that all of you kids respect. Again, I just loved hearing him act so much like a kid. It was great.
Yeah, serious credit to Zach Levi, because playing a kid as an adult is a lot harder than you think it is. I mean, it was one of the most interesting things about the Jumanji sequel that came out last year, 2 years ago. But the fact that The Rock can believably portray a 16-year-old nerd in his body was a big kudos to him for that, for being able to pull that off, because it's not an easy thing to do. So I want to give a lot of credit to Zach Levi for that in particular, because, again, an adult playing a kid it's not easy. It's really not.
No, it takes a fine line. All right. I think that pretty much wraps up our review of the actual movie. So let's go ahead and talk about the money.
Here comes the money.
Here we go. Money talk.
Here comes the money. Money, 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 money.
Dollar, dollar. Dollar, dollar.
All righty. Shazam has a budget of 80 to 100 million. According to the wiki, as of today, it has earned 162 million. Obviously, this movie will be profitable. How profitable, it's hard to say. Aquaman made $1 billion. I think Wonder Woman was in the 800 million range. But they also didn't have the Avengers right around the corner.
Yeah, Aquaman benefited tremendously from its placement on the schedule. There wasn't a whole lot out there, and Aquaman was also, in some respects, more so than Shazam, I think, was designed for the worldwide box office. Yeah. There wasn't a lot of interesting dialogue. There wasn't a lot of localized stuff. There's not a lot of gags that were unique to a specific geographic location. It's a lot of visual effects and watch this guy wander through the world. That's not the case here.
Yeah, I'm projecting at least 500 million, but then again, like I said, it's got to get through Hellboy next week.
I don't think Hellboy's going to take too much out of it. Some, but not a whole lot.
Then there's nothing the following week, and then there's the Avengers. So it's got 2 more weeks before it's gonna lose its place in the market, and that's my only worry with this thing, because I think it's got positive reviews, it's got a positive audience score, it's got a lot of really good buzz to it. Here's the other thing: Aquaman is well known. Aquaman is part of is like top 5 known DC characters throughout the world. I'm not entirely sure how much Captain Marvel is known in your important markets like Asia.
And again, there is confusion, because there is a large amount of people who remember Justice League Captain Marvel. They don't know he's Shazam. It's not exactly the most common knowledge outside of the comic book world. Yes, thanks for your input, Eddie.
So, when we talk about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, I mean, Ant-Man made its money back and was profitable, but it didn't necessarily set the world on fire. I think this is gonna be an Ant-Man type of movie for DC, where it's not gonna hit $1 billion. It'll do just fine. It'll support its sequel, and it will certainly generate a profit for DC and Warner Brothers. But it's by the end of the year, if it's still in the top 10, it'll be at the bottom of the top 10.
I would be shocked if it sticks around the top 10 at the end of the year.
Well, you figure
there's just so many really heavy hitters coming along, and there's also a handful of movies that are positioned well to kind of sleep and just kind of to be sleeper hits, and that will probably do better than this.
Well, you figure Avengers, Captain Marvel, are going to be right there at the top. Star Wars,
along with Star Wars, Frozen 2,
Aladdin. So there's five. There's your top 5 right there. I don't know if Joker's gonna, how much money Joker's gonna make. First of all, it's gonna be, I think, rated R.
Actually, that's a good point. What do we think about going from a lighthearted, pseudo-family fun action flick like Shazam to something like Joker? We have all seen that trailer, right? I'm kind of surprised you guys didn't call me in to do a trailer review when I saw that, because that was pretty unnerving.
I'm looking forward to it. But I'm looking forward to it as a character piece, because somewhere out there, Pat Mullen is now pulling what's left of his hair out of his head. That this is Joker in name. This is Joker in name only, which I'm fine with.
I don't expect this to exist within strict continuity. I mean, first of all, I think if DC were to actually go along this. And I know the reference I'm about to make is a Marvel one, but if DC went with an Elseworld style of movies that allows them to experiment with different takes on things that are familiar characters but not within the strict continuity of their worlds, that might serve them better, because this would mark the 3rd different version of the Joker in the last, 10 years?
Right. You had Heath Ledger, Jared Leto, and now this one. And this is not supposed to be a canonical Joker. This is a standalone tale of a man, descending into madness.
And I mean, in all fairness, Joaquin Phoenix is a more than capable actor. He's a good to great actor, quite frankly. Even if
let's admit it. We, regardless of what we thought of the trailer or not, we all agree that he is going to, run circles around Jared Leto's Joker.
I could run circles around Jared Leto's
Joker. Hang
on,
that's not, neither of what you're saying is fair. They really didn't, other than his look, which his look more defines his character than anything else. They really never defined what that Joker was. They cut the fuck out of it in Suicide Squad, so you get that you get kind of a shambles of a character. And number 2,
what you get is Clown Ex Machina, where he shows up randomly throughout the storyline because the plot says so.
Right, but there's
Clown Ex Machina. Can I steal that?
There's no character there. They cut the character out of the movie, and so what's left is a little bit of Juggalo and a little bit of nonsense. But
by which to say a lot of nonsense.
With this, there's
nothing but him as a character.
I was going to say, this is a character study. This whole thing is a character study. And so here's the thing. You could have very easily taken the same movie. The one movie I'm thinking of is probably not the best example, but it's the first one that jumped into my head. The Fan with Robert De Niro.
Okay.
What? Hang on.
Interesting choice. I want to hear how you connect these dots.
Here you have a guy who's is a minor obsession, and it grows into this horrible monster of a thing. As Robert De Niro's character descends into madness. That's what this story is. It's somebody it's sort of a through the looking glass tale of someone living in these modern times, and how that shapes his personality and ultimately breaks him. But it would be hard to sell that movie standalone from everything else and get and make money on it. So they were like, okay, who's crazy out there? Well, the Joker's nuts. People know what the Joker is. Okay, same idea, but we're going to call the movie The Joker. And here's why I don't jump up and down and like Pat does, or some of these other folks. They're like, oh, this isn't the Joker I know. Even in the comic books, the Joker is known for saying, they've said it in a couple of different stories. One of which is actually The Killing Joke by Frank Miller. He doesn't know what his origin is, and the character itself says, if I have an origin, I prefer it to be multiple choice. They've always been loosey goosey with where the Joker came from. So if you have a filmmaker out there that wants to tell a story about how society broke a guy and turned him into a terrorist who paints his face up like a clown, I'm fine with it.
I don't think he's going to go the terrorist route. They're going to go the serial killer.
Again, If you blow, I assume he's going to at some point blow something up. In which case, in my mind, terrorist. But
fair enough. If he does trigger a large scale explosion, fair. I'm hoping that the ending of the movie is a shot of the Joker in Arkham talking to not Harley but some other psychiatrist, and he's just confessed all of this, and the doctor just kind of looks up at him and goes, "That's a compelling story and completely different from the one you told me yesterday."
That's okay. A, that's a brilliant idea. B, if they put Harley Quinn in there, so help me God, I will chuck my soda at the movie screen.
That being said, so we're going back to Shazam here. It's I think
I'll say at least it wasn't Venom that got us distracted this time.
but once again mentioned, isn't it? So yeah, here's the struggle money wise here. Like I said, it'll be successful. It'll make us a certain amount of money. Could it make all the is it going to make all the money that it could possibly make? No, it's too close to Avengers. I'm not entirely sure. I wish they had put this out a little earlier this year. Like this should have been a February movie. The February was a lot of rot, and I think that even DC and Warner Brothers were a little unsure how well this was going to test with audiences. A little shaky, a little nervous in the service. But then they chose to put it out in a very, at the beginning of it's going to be a very busy movie season. The other choice would have been August. If it comes out in August, sure, by that point you're dealing with summer movie blockbuster fatigue. But I'll tell you what, if you look at what's out there, what's coming up once you get out of May, June's pretty loaded. You've got Aladdin, Godzilla, Dark Phoenix, Men in Black, Toy Story. Spider-Man is in July.
That's a lot of movies, but boy, I'm not looking forward to any of those.
You never are.
No. Hold on. Facetiousness aside, you and I, neither of us are looking forward to Toy Story 4.
No. That looks like a pile of
Neither
crap.
of us are looking forward to Dark Phoenix.
That's not true. I'm looking forward to Dark Phoenix.
Mark, come on.
I'm not looking forward to Dark. I'm sorry. I have a problem with Dark Phoenix because I absolutely love the Phoenix saga, and I have a real hang-up with the movies who apparently keep forgetting that there are other facets of the Phoenix character besides the Dark Phoenix. Like, do you guys know how to play more than one character type, or is this all you think you can do?
I think you know the answer to that. You got
considering it's written and directed, it's at least, I believe it's written, if not written and directed, by the same guy who wrote X3. I have zero hope for that movie. Absolutely.
Well, that's not what you said, though. You said you're not looking. You said we're not looking forward to it. I never said it was. I think it's going to be.
You just want to watch a train wreck.
I enjoy a good train wreck. All right, you got The Lion King, which is another one that's probably going to make $1 billion.
That's a $1 billion baby
we're up,
right there.
So it's between Spider-Man and, which I had forgotten about Spider-Man. So between Spider-Man and The Lion King, Spider-Man. We're up to 7, by the way, and it's all Disney movies. August would have been a good time to do this. There's not a whole lot here. I've got Hobbs and Shaw and the New Mutants still sitting on the calendar.
Have they not just finally shot the New Mutants in the head yet?
Allegedly still on the release calendar.
Look, just release it on Hulu like you were planning, so I don't have to watch it, and we're all happy.
I'm fine with that.
The other option would have been September, which is the new "fuck you." It's January.
It wasn't January that used to be the "fuck you." It always used to be February. The "fuck you."
It started. No. The original "fuck you," it's January, was in fact January, and then
I could have sworn February was the "fuck you" month.
No, January.
You go back to this is like when I was a baby. It's like the 80s. It's January.
Okay.
Yeah, release Shazam in September. Then maybe then it's
really
still.
I think really what changed the January schedule that people realized, hey, people still go to the movies in January, was Titanic. And then February just kind of became the default, no, this is our dumping ground now. And we haven't really moved beyond it, although, again, September now gets shat on pretty hard.
I'd like to credit actually Deadpool for kind of reawakening the February release.
In the last couple of years, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, that said, I think there are only 2 major February releases I can remember over the last 20 years or so. One of them's Deadpool, which I didn't want to see but had to, and the other Silence of the Lambs, which is maybe my favorite movie of all time.
So they could have put this on August 16th, which then it would have only had to compete with, I think, Angry Birds, and it would have been fine.
You got.
Or the 23rd, there's nothing on my calendar. The other option, if which puts it a little too close to Joker, would have been September 13th, where its only competition is Downton Abbey. So, my wife and her friends. Terrific. In any case,
they're period nerds, man. They're almost as bad as certain levels of comic book nerds.
My wife likes her royalty. What are you going to do?
Hey, look, whatever works for you, man. We're all nerds about something. I'm not trying. I should badmouth everyone like that, but
I mean, yeah, I think Shazam would have done better in February. I mean, when you look at what...
there was literal nothing.
If you look at what we covered, I mean, January 29th, we covered The Runaways, which tells me there was nothing that week. Then we covered Voltron. Then we covered The Punisher. And the only 2 movies that we reviewed in the entire month of February were Alita and Fighting With My Family.
And really, if Shazam had been on the same weekend as either of those, we would have done Shazam.
Right. So,
I'd like to see them make January kind of take it out of being a dumping ground. January is one of the hardest months to get through. It's post-holiday season. It's still winter weather, but you don't have the appeal of Christmas or whatever you celebrate to distract you. I would like to see January get some more events, and at the bottom of that, some big releases to make you look forward to weekends and everything, and to going out with your friends in January.
Look, they just want you to be seeing Star Wars for the 4th time.
Probably will be.
The big release this year in January was Glass, and Glass did pretty well for not being a great movie. So, all right, moving on. We got the weekend results here. Shazam was the number 1 movie. No surprise there at all.
Surprised at how little it did, actually. To be perfectly honest, I thought it would do more.
It beat Pet Sematary. They debuted.
Guys, I know I'm going to officially review that in a couple of weeks with Alexis and Jason. Not a good movie.
It's Pet Sematary debuted at number 2, Shazam number 1. Dumbo got knocked from 1 to 3, Us 2 to 4, Captain Marvel 3 to 5. The Best of Enemies debuted at number 6, and rounding out your top 10 were 5 Feet Apart, Unplanned, Wonder Park, and How to Train Your Dragon, Part 3. Where we stand for the year, no, worldwide. Captain Marvel finally made it over $1 billion. I believe this is the first female-led superhero movie to crack $1 billion. So congratulations, Marvel. Congratulations, Brie Larson. Congratulations, Disney. Congratulations, gals.
Hey, Brie Larson. Enjoy those corporate shackles for another 10 years.
How do you feel, Alexis? Women have finally achieved this wonderful goal. Doesn't it affect you all? Don't you all get lifted up by the same wave?
I just was focusing on the Flurkid.
The Wandering Earth.
I'm sorry, Goose is my favorite character in that movie. I'm not gonna lie, I love the cat.
The Wandering Earth is still at number 2 with almost $700 million. How to Train Your Dragon, good for you, Universal, is at $500 million.
Just because you don't care about that film franchise doesn't mean other people don't.
Alita.
I saw that opening weekend with my family. Actually, that was a pretty good cap to the trilogy. I was very impressed.
Yeah,
it's a surprisingly solid film trilogy.
I saw it too, and was awake for at least a third of it.
Much like WrestleMania.
Alita Battle Angel, $400 million. And then we've got, rounding out your top 10, you've got Glass with $246 million. Us with $217 million. Good for you, Jordan Peele.
No, don't give him kudos for this movie.
Okay.
I haven't seen it yet, and I promised my kid sister I'd take it as soon as we both have an open night. So, but I still want to see it. I mean, Get Out is one of my favorite horror movies of the last few years.
Get Out is a really, really solid horror movie. I was a little bit surprised at from my perspective, the shocking decline in film quality between just 2 films.
Dumbo is still raking in some of the dough at $216 million.
Dumbo's not raking that in. Dumbo's out there begging for peanuts.
Look at you. Look at you, punny. The Lego Movie is $184 million. Shazam cracked the top 10 at $162 million, as I said before. And finally, rounding out your top 10, as I said, is Escape Room, Sony's only entry into the top 10.
So far, in fairness, so far.
So far. I mean, well, everything's about to change over the next month, but...
dude, 2 months from now, I imagine Captain Marvel is like the only consistent movie on this list in 2 months' time.
Well, I was going to say, by the end of June, everything from 4 down will be out of the top 10. The only ones left standing will be Captain Marvel, The Wandering Earth, and How to Train Your Dragon. And How to Train Your Dragon will probably be number 10. And then it won't stay in the top 10 because Star Wars. Let's see.
You know, I'm going to play the role of the optimist here. I think Shazam will still be in the top 10 by the end of the year.
I hope so. I mean, I'm not one of these people cheering for DC to fail. You know, as much as I've enjoyed, the Marvel movies, this wasn't a matter of, I'm cheering for Marvel over DC. It was, you gave me 2 products. One tasted poorly, the other one tasted great, and that's where I was coming from. You know, because there was this note out there that was being blasted over and over that if you didn't like DC movies, you were a Marvel shill, and it's like, no, DC was producing crap until Wonder Woman came out.
No, I agree. I mean, you know that I'm a giant Marvel fan. In fact, aren't we doing a Marvel retrospective here pretty soon?
Yep.
Starting this Friday, actually.
Yep, starting this Friday.
Yeah, so you got me in on that. No, I didn't want DC to fail. That was actually part of the reason I got so mad at it. I didn't want Justice League to be as bad as it was. I wanted to walk into Justice League and I wanted to throw my arms up and cheer like I did at the scene in the first Avengers movie where they do that rotating pan around the team in New York.
See, I wasn't even mad at Justice League. Justice League was
disappointed.
Was just a botched production and had so many problems that it was like, okay, it would have been a miracle if it had been good. The one that really gets my ire is Batman v Superman. Again, an extra year in production. It was like it was the spoiled brat of the DC universe, and I've defended the movie. When we reviewed it, we weren't nearly as hard as I'm being on it. But it's not as good as it... Listen, when you think about what Batman versus Superman could have been and what we got, that's where the anger comes from.
Yeah.
I'll give you that. My problem just mostly comes from DC as a studio because we're busy yelling at them, okay, we know you want to catch up with Marvel. We know you guys are stupidly far behind. We get that. But stop rushing things.
Well, like I said, I think now they've just abandoned the Marvel formula altogether and said, you know what, we're gonna do this like James Bond, and this is where we're finding success. And so far, with 3 out of the last 4 pictures being wild successes to one degree or another, and I mean, like Aquaman not only was so successful, it's getting a sequel, it's getting a what do you call it, a spinoff. Wonder Woman has already got a sequel, and if that does well, they'll do with they'll just keep doing them until people stop going to see these. I actually think I think that's a winning formula. I don't think you have to do what Marvel is doing, which is the overall arcing narrative. All right, anything else we want to cover in the money before we move on?
Nah. Again, look, 2019, we're all going to be hailing the mouse. That's how this is going to work.
Yeah, we've been hailing the mouse now for a few years. That ain't changing.
Yeah, just say, start hailing the mouse. The mouse has already taken over, okay?
I think this year's going to be especially dominant because even in previous years that they've had like the top 2 spots or 3 of the top 5, which has happened, I'm imagining we're going to get like 7 of the top 10 this year.
Well, that's the thing. Like
Disney movies.
Universal usually is pretty competitive with Disney. For every Marvel movie or Star Wars or something that cracks $1 billion, there's like a Jurassic Park. I don't know how competitive Universal's. I mean, Universal, I think, has got one swinging dick this summer, and it's Godzilla King of Monsters, which,
in all fairness, I am horribly looking forward to. I loved Godzilla. I enjoyed King Kong. I love a good monster movie, so I'm looking forward to Godzilla King of Monsters. But I think you're right, and that's kind of their one at bat for this year.
Oh, did you guys get the sneak peek at Godzilla King of Monsters when you saw Shazam?
Yes,
I didn't.
I
did not. I'm annoyed.
I was cheering. I was scaring the crap out of the girl I went to see the movie with when they showed King Ghidorah's three faces. I was jumping up in my seat and making a complete ass out of myself, and I didn't care. That was awesome.
That comes out on the last day of school here for us Floridians. I'm intending to take my who will be 5-year-old and 8-year-old to go see it. I don't know if it's going to give them nightmares or not, but I think as a parent,
I hope it does. Go for it.
I think as a parent, they need to see a giant fire-breathing lizard take on a 3-headed dragon.
Not to mention the giant moth, which is apparently one of the most terrifying creatures in existence.
Taking on the giant pterodactyl.
And Rodan's going to show up, and
can't wait.
Then King Kong does a last-minute run-in
with a steel chair.
To run in with the chair until 2020.
And he will. I just hope they get the ending to King Kong versus Godzilla right this time, because Godzilla all day long. The monkey has no hope.
It's an ape.
Not a monkey.
Wow, I walked right into that. I'm normally that guy.
Boo, Winfree. Boo yourself.
I am going to break one of my fingers for that one. God, that's bad. More importantly, I just dislike King Kong. But the ape has no chance. All hail the king, and it's Godzilla.
So King Kong may do a run-in, but it's next year when we get them headlining WrestleMania here in Tampa. All right.
Look, he's going to do the Ultimate Warrior run down to save Hulk Hogan because Hogan's in the main event for no reason.
Oh, all right, everyone, take a drink.
Running down the ring, Ultimate Warrior style, shaking the ring, and just there's a mental image I'm not going to get out of my head anytime soon.
With the tassels on his arms, down that huge ramp, and then when he gets to the fight where Godzilla's fighting off a couple of other guys, he actually has to lean on the ropes for about 10 seconds to regain his wind.
Does that make King Ghidorah the Honky Tonk Man? Are we now picturing a dragon out there, swiveling its hips?
Not insult King Ghidorah by associating him with that bloviating jackass.
You see, I can't thank Honky Tonk Man because somebody made a joke about Honky Tonk, pointing out it sounds like a donkey getting hit by a truck. Honky Tonk! And now every time I hear someone mention the Honky Tonk Man, all I hear is Honky Tonk.
Okay, first of all, you go sit
in all seriousness.
Hang on. Alexis, you go sit in the corner. Think about what you just said.
Oh, trust me, Sean's already heard that joke a million times. He hates it.
I mean this in all seriousness. To that moron who jumped Bret Hart at the Hall of Fame ceremony, Honky Tonk was right there. And, I mean, sure, you're still probably going to get jumped on by all the wrestlers, but they're going to let you get a few shots in at Honky first, because nobody likes that guy.
Nobody likes Bret Hart either. And with that said,
plenty of people like Bret Hart.
Are you ready?
Moving on.
No! I said, are you ready?
Don't get worried there for a second. God! I got disconnected. It got so quiet.
No! God, please, no! No! No!
I may as well complete the gag. He's got the soundbite running over us right now, and we're talking over it.
Oh,
you
sorry.
Certainly are, you fucking assholes. I hate this show and everything on it. All right.
You want to redo that?
Evan Dossie of Midwest Film Journal. Lightning doesn't even strike once in Shazam.
I mean, that's a bad pun.
Yeah, it is.
It's a really bad pun.
Rachel Wagner of Rachel Reviews, YouTube. It has fun moments, but the tone was all over the place and jarring.
I'm not sure. See,
I don't think the tone was all over the place.
I don't think this was a tonally out of touch movie. I don't.
Yeah, is her idea of tonally out of touch? Hi, I'm laughing in one scene. Oh no, I'm nervous in the other scene.
That was kind of my impression of that. Is that she likes her movies to be tonally a flat line.
Yeah, this is a slightly nuanced film. It's not even a deeply nuanced film. There's a bit of nuance, and apparently you can't even follow that, so good on you.
Rain Jockinen of MullingMovies.com. I certainly wouldn't mind seeing Shazam teamed up with other DC characters in future films, but as a standalone movie, it had my inner 14-year-old dreaming of the ability to speed up time, or at least hit a magic fast-forward button in the IMAX theater.
You know, that might be a fair point, actually, that I'm not sure. Again, like, we assume Black Adam is coming in the near future, and The Rock saves all things that he touches. We know this from a cinematic perspective.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did you sit through Tooth Fairy?
Okay, recently. And yes, for the record, I have seen Tooth Fairy.
Oliver Jones of The Observer, top critic. Shazam is a blandly presentational as a market research PowerPoint.
What?
I'm going to assume that you botched at least two of those words, because otherwise that sentence barely is coherent.
Shazam is as blandly presentational as a market research PowerPoint.
Okay, thank you for correcting that. Yeah, it's still a stupid point, but at least the sentence is constructed properly now.
Sorry.
Okay.
Reading is fundamental.
Look, 9 times out of 10, if you flub stuff like that, I know what you actually mean to say, so I can go along with it. But every now and then, there's something like that I just need proper clarification on.
Okay.
No, this isn't. I mean, Look, I'm mostly dead inside at this point, and this movie didn't actually. Again, this didn't really tickle my funny bone. I didn't break down in tears. But if you want to pretend that this, 14-year-old finally reuniting with his mother, only to discover that the vast majority of his understanding of his current situation is a self-delusion, is a lie of his own making. That's not blandly presentational. It may not be earth-shattering, it may not be revelatory, but that's not at all the same. There is a degree between stuff that is blandly happening on screen and stuff that makes you rethink the very nature of your existence. It's not one or the other, buddy. There is a scale. And does Shazam fall more towards presentational than, again, completely revelatory? Sure, fair enough. But placing it on par with a business PowerPoint is not just a bridge too far, it's like several bridges too far.
Matthew Lacona of San Diego Reader, top critic. Director David F. Sandberg remains a horror guy at heart, and the ping-ponging between yucks and yikes leads to a nasty case of aesthetic whiplash.
Okay, who pays this guy?
Apparently the San Diego Reader.
It is interesting, actually, to think that there have been a lot of directors in recent cinema who have crossed genres, and they've actually been doing really well. Yes, the director of Shazam is previously a horror director. James Wan, horror director, directed Aquaman. The director of Spider-Man from Homecoming was a horror director. So I think it's kind of interesting that I think actually crossing the genres like this is good for these movies. I think we're getting some really cool, unexpected styles and a lot of fun out of it.
I mean, frankly, I'd rather we just got a straight, superhero movie that's done as a horror film, but the only trailer I've seen for something roughly akin to that featured Elizabeth Banks prominently and made me want to vomit.
Barry Hertz. Oh boy, does he ever.
Wow. Mark, no. You get to go sit in the corner now and think about what you just said.
Of the Globe and Mail, top critic. So beyond working as an advertisement for DC's other movies, Shazam also offers a stifling, claustrophobic cinematic landscape which has no point of reference outside of DC's own intellectual properties.
I fail to understand why that's a problem.
I fail to understand why he's complaining about is he complaining about the location or?
No, I think his specific point of reference here is that this doesn't feel like it's part of any wider universe other than meme references to other DC properties.
And is that necessarily a bad thing?
I'm not of the opinion that it is.
I think that's actually part of the problem, that too many films try too hard to say, oh, look, we're part of this universe. Need an example, go see Tom Cruise's The Mummy.
Or don't.
Yeah,
really
for love of
don't.
God. Yeah, really don't.
Right.
We need more movies that say, yeah, we're part of a universe, but they still have the ability to stand on their own.
Roger Moore of Movie Nation, Robert's father.
Stop that.
30 minutes of fun in a 2-hour and 12-minute movie.
Okay, moron. If we're going to use the subjective fun quotient to try and determine the quality of this film, allow me to substitute mine and make yours look even dumber. 3 minutes of fun, if that, stretched out over the entirety of the runtime of this movie. I do not care if you have fun. You have fun at different things. I have fun at different things. Pretending that the fact that you as an individual had only X amount of fun, for whatever value you want to ascribe that to, while consuming, while a very commercially artistic project, but it's still at its core an artistic project designed to evoke a variety of reactions across a variety of people. I mean, that's a level of narcissism I'm even shocked out of this jackass. You are not the supreme arbiter of fun, sir. Stop it.
No more old white dudes reviewing movies.
Thank you, Bree.
To be fair,
somebody had to say it.
To be fair, plenty of young women who've reviewed movies that we've had to rip apart too. Just better critics. Better. I just want you to be better, people.
Speaking of white broads, Marianne Johansson, a flick philosopher.
Have we ever confirmed her race, or have we just run with that?
Nothing matters in this literal adolescent male power fantasy. A cheesy mishmash of nonsense and low stakes. Anyone who needs at least a bit of meat in their superhero tales will be disappointed.
Yes, because so many adolescents dream about being orphans gifted with powers. More importantly, I mean, how much do you... first of all, I would take minor issue with the point that there's no meat here. Again, like, is there much? Is this on the leaner side of things? Yeah, again, that's probably true. I have no issue with that. But let's also not pretend that everything needs to be Hamlet. Because frankly, it doesn't. If everything's Hamlet, Hamlet's not Hamlet. Part of what makes it so special is how unbelievably difficult it is to produce something like that. I will agree, actually, about the low stakes. This is a very low stakes movie as far as that goes, and I think that's deliberate on the part of the writing.
Well, I mean, you don't know what would have happened if Dr. Savannah became God.
Well, sure, but they didn't.
Sorry, go ahead, man.
I mean, I don't know what would have happened because he never presents what would have happened. Like, it's just, okay, he's not a good guy. We don't want him to have ultimate power. I mean, okay, fair.
Okay, but again, this is like a pro wrestling thing.
Can I finish my initial point, please?
The thrill is in the hunt. Go ahead.
My initial point was I think they deliberately set up a low-stakes movie because they wanted the focus to be on the journey of the character of Billy Batson, not on his external conflict with Mark Strong. And if that's what their goal was, I think they did an adequate job of that. That doesn't stop the movie from being low stakes in the traditional sense of the word, and yes, I actually think they could have done a little bit better of a job of establishing a plan on the part of Mark Strong's character. Like, he wants this power, fair enough. What does he want to do with it? I mean, we assume he's a bad guy. He demonstrates all the characteristics of a bad guy. So we get there logically that we don't want him to achieve this, but there's only... I mean, I think the other problem I briefly have with this is that, I mean, he murders a room full of people, but that's the only... that's it. He chases and fights with Shazam, but... And he does a few mustache twirly things here and there, but... I agree that there's never really a sense of the true stakes of any of their conflicts. I also don't think that the conflict between Shazam and Mark Strong is the central tension of the movie. So it falls a little bit by the wayside. It's also, if that had been what they were going for, was this climactic clash between ideologies and personalities, then yeah, they failed. I don't think they were going for that. Consequently, I don't think it's a failure on the part of the film.
Exactly. It's kind of like comparing, the Avengers movies to movies like Spider-Man Homecoming and Ant-Man and the Wasp. Neither of those had villains that were going to take over the world, destroy everything, blah, blah, blah.
And frankly, the lack of menace from Corey Stoll's character in Ant-Man and the Wasp was a big problem for me, because there's no, it was mentioned before, there's no stakes for that movie outside of he'll unleash chaos. I mean, is he spelling it properly? Is it all capitalized? Is it an acronym for something? What's going on here? But again, the point, a lot more of the tension in Ant-Man and the Wasp was the journey of Scott Lang from deadbeat douchebag to quasi-heroic, mostly deadbeat, amusing douchebag.
Leonard Maltin of LeonardMaltin.com.
Why? Why aren't you dead?
Shazam wants to be slick and smart-assy, except when it suddenly chooses to be warm and sincere, like a TV commercial for some medication or life insurance. You can't have it both ways. But this film repeatedly tries to do so. This movie is a muddle.
That's actually
why are so many of these reviewers against the tonal shifts of scene to scene? What I'm sorry. Am I just blind to the fact about this? Because I didn't think there was any problems with this.
I mean, that's a really good line, actually. This is basically a commercial for, like, mood medication. But to the actual point, no. Like, a movie is not a single tone. The question is in the transitions. I've seen plenty of movies that I found totally jarring from one scene to the other because they jump back and forth without a whole lot of reason. Here they at least keep it, while there are different tones, it's relatively straightforward. If he's in super costume by himself doing stupid things, it's gonna try to be amusing. If he's interacting with his foster family at any point, it's gonna be a bit more treading towards the maudlin side. And I think that's not a bad thing. I mean, I didn't want this to be a straight comedy. I don't think it would have worked, quite frankly. I think without the actual heart... I mean, most comedies that go for 100% comedy tend to fail miserably if there's not some kind of emotional core to the story they're telling. I mean, take Dumb and Dumber. It's one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Because there's nothing actually there apart from the stupidity of the characters.
All right, last one. Wendy Shreve, a featuring film. Think Batman's sidekick. A few years younger and in a more outrageous costume with primo superpowers. Shazam, 2019.
Shazam is not Robin.
You have clearly never seen a Robin comic. Or any. You've never seen the character of Robin, because I remember the green shorts. I remember the green briefs that Robin used to wear. This is not a worse costume. This isn't even worse than the crappy one they forced on Chris O'Donnell in those two movies. Like, I mean, Shazam didn't have nipples on his suit. Robin did. Congratulations. I know which costume sucks more. This is demonstrably false. More importantly, that's not correct in the sense that even Billy as a character represented any of the... I mean, I'm sure at some point there has been a Robin that was on the plucky or kind of wise-assy side the way Billy is, but there's not a lot of them. They tend to be very different characters. I mean, Jason Todd, for example, was not given to levity.
That's why everyone always says, they have a specifically favorite Robin. Everyone's saying they have a specifically favorite Green Lantern. You gravitate towards a different style of character. And, once we get more sequels, I'm pretty sure we're going to hear who's everyone's favorite member of the Marvel family is. Because they do all have definitive characteristics. Again, Mary Marvel really doesn't get to show any of that in the movie, but still.
Assuming they actually write them that way, and bear in mind they should, and assuming they come up with a name for the group.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for like the crappy names because they're all different colors, so I mean I imagine there's going to be a gag at one point about the Rainbow Coalition.
God, I hope so. I hope they run with that line.
I'm hoping since the Asian kid's a gamer, I'm hoping for a Rainbow Ninja Brigade.
That'll work too. All right.
If they were gonna, they could pay a gaming organization and try and have him rattle off a few names about like, really can't we be associated with like Cloud9 Gaming or Team Solo Mate or something?
Next week we have a whole week dedicated to Hellboy. We've got Batman, Hellboy,
and I'm sure that's not going to backfire.
We got Batman, Hellboy, Starman on source material. Myself and Robert Winfree will be back next week to yell at each other and cut each other off and not let each other finish our thoughts, as you've come to know and love on this show. We'll be reviewing the new Hellboy. Over on the Metal Hammer of Doom, welcome to the Garden State, you fucks. It's the new Overkill. The Wings of War? God damn it. The Wings...
Look, it's what... If you're welcoming anyone to New Jersey, you failed miserably at life.
The Wings of War is the name of the new album. The single is "Welcome to the Garden State, You Fucks." All right, that last part I added on there. But you can't say. But if you're gonna talk, if you're gonna reference New Jersey, you always have to end your sentence with that. With that "You Fucks." And then on Long Road,
that is actually the state motto.
Yes, I was just there. And then Thursday, we're bringing back an old favorite. Long Road to Ruin. We're going to look at the old Hellboy movies, the 04 and 08 iterations. And on Friday, myself, Robert Winfree, and Alexis Hano will be looking at the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 2, Countdown to Endgame, a review of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
We should be on Phase 1 this week. Oh, sorry, next week is Phase 2. You're correct. My mistake. I misheard you.
And we're jumping around the calendar again.
Yes, this week is Phase 1, next week is Phase 2, and just in time for Endgame Phase 3 is the 26th. The week of the 22nd, we have another tossed salad and scrambled eggs week. We've got Green Lantern, Planet of the Apes on source material, Pet Sematary. I won't be here for this. It'll just be Robert, Alexis, and Jason Teasley. I will be at Whitesnake, because here I go again on my own. And then on the Metal Hammer of Doom, we have the new Twar album. And then finally, the week of the 29th, we'll have Avengers Forever on source material. We'll review Avengers Endgame on the 30th. No Metal Hammer of Doom that week. We're gonna review the Orville Season 2 on May 1st. And then Alexis Hana is back again, this time for Part 2 of the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina.
They try to get me to stay away, and I keep coming back.
Yes, she does. All right, Alexis, I hear you got things to sell, so go ahead and tell them where they can buy it.
And I'm just happy finally I can change my plug. I think after a while you guys were getting sick and tired of me saying the exact same thing over and over again. Honeysuckle Rose Creations, intersection of geek and chic, makers of awesome upcycled jewelry. We just finished our weekend at Planet Comic-Con here in Kansas City. We got 2 shows coming up in April. We are heading both towards West Plains for OzCon and for Cape Girardeau for Cape Comic-Con. This is our first time at Oz. This is our, I want to say, 4th or 5th time at Cape. We love that show. As always, you can find us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Again, Honeysuckle Rose Creations, intersection of geek and chic.
All right, Winfree, you're on.
All right, it's been mentioned a couple of times, but this Friday begins our Countdown to Endgame series. Mark, Alexis, and myself will be reviewing the Marvel Cinematic Universe Phase 1, Iron Man, Iron Man 2, Captain America, the First Avenger, Thor, and the Avengers. And Mark will have a brief 25 seconds to talk about why The Incredible Hulk as a movie sucks. On a more serious note, he will get a chance to try and explain why he thinks it's an important entry into the film canon, even though it's demonstrably not, apart from loosely introducing a general who becomes a bureaucrat who should have been a primary antagonist, but suddenly Zemo.
I like Incredible Hulk.
Okay.
And it's not just because I got a huge thing for Edward Norton.
That's moderately disturbing.
I'm a girl. I'm allowed to.
Okay, I mean, look, fair enough, but you're the only other person I've ever heard say they have a thing for Edward Norton besides Edward Norton.
Okay, that was actually funny.
So we'll be reviewing, again, Phase 1 of the MCU, talking about some of the overarching themes that went into that series of movies, little story tidbits. We're not going to talk too much about film craft, although that might come up here or there. I just wanted to take a bit and look at the story as it proceeds to Endgame, which is going to shatter all kinds of box office records that will stand for at least another 3 decades. So you can look forward to that on Friday. This Saturday, we'll have live coverage of UFC 236 in the MMA Zone of 411 Mania. Whoever at the UFC loves their interim titles so much, they finally got a show headlined by not 1, but 2 interim title fights. So we'll have Max Holloway versus Dustin Poirier, which is a darn good fight. And Israel Adesanya versus Kelvin Gastelum, which is a perfectly serviceable fight. The rest of that card, though, yeah, not so much. This is a 2-fight card. You can hear myself and Jeff Harris preview this event on the latest edition of the 411 Ground and Pound MMA podcast. This coming Sunday, I will be hosting that same show. We're recording much earlier in the day this time. I have a family thing in the evening, so we're recording around 9 Pacific. So it'll be up earlier than usual, that's all I'm saying. We'll review UFC 236 and preview Fight Night 140, 9. The UFC's back in Russia for this one. Alistair Overeem versus Alexei Oleinik is your main event now, since Alexander Volkov fell out of the main event. Which sucks, because Volkov and Overeem was a fight I was looking forward to. That said, horsemeat Overeem and old man strength Oleinik, I can live with it. The rest of that card, yeah. We got a couple of those. Just kind of, So feel free to listen to those if you're interested at all in the wide, wacky, wonderful world of mixed martial arts, because it's got all those things. And then, next week for Hellboy, we'll be back here, and I will do my best not to interrupt Mark, so expect long pauses as I wait to make sure he's finished a thought.
Good. It's exactly what I want. I want this show to sound as awkward as humanly possible, like we haven't been doing it for 3 years. All right.
I was going to say, I think me talking over the music for the second time did that enough. For the record, I'm sorry about that. I didn't hear you. I was laughing and I didn't hear you make the intro to it, so I thought that everyone had just gotten quiet.
In fairness, he doesn't use the same intro. Like he sets it up differently each time we do this show.
Okay, I'm sorry.
So
there was the joke, and then everything got quiet, and I seriously didn't realize that we had cut to the music. I thought I was actually worried for a second. Wait, did I get disconnected or something?
No. I've gotten pretty good at picking up on the context clues. I've stepped on it a handful of times, so it's not just you by any stretch of the imagination. But
okay, I am sorry about that, guys.
There's a picture of Shazam being molested by Harley Quinn. I'm thinking about using that as the picture for tonight's podcast.
Look, let's not perpetuate the myth that Harley Quinn is an interesting character anymore, please.
Thank you.
I don't know how that would perpetuate that she's interesting. That she's a sex bot, sure.
Stop putting her in places. Stop inserting her into things, or things into her, or however that works.
I was going to say...
I really like that picture you sent us of the Rock in the Black Adam costume standing next to Zach Levi. Go with that. It was good.
The fact that The Rock is holding this giant thing of whey protein is what sells it for me.
That was good.
All right.
I mean, I don't know that they'll ever actually make those two side by side, because Zachary Levi has to be in that muscle suit, and The Rock is just The Rock. I mean, he doesn't actually need the padding to fill out the suit and make it look like that.
All right, and with that said, we thank you for joining us on Damn You Hollywood, and we hope to avenge you at some point in the future.
Springtime tips and fun facts from Paul, Kristen, and Dexter at Total Wine & More.
Every bunny loves honey glazed carrots, a great side dish for your springtime celebration and a delicious complement to a sweet, bright Moscato.
Your Bloody Mary bar will be the talk of brunch with the vodka I'm stocking. Pile those toppings sky high.
Serving lamb this season? Try it with a bold Cabernet from the trendy Paso Robles region.
Whether you're hosting or just bringing the wine, Total Wine & More has you covered with 8,000 wines, 3,000 spirits, and 2,500 beers at always low prices. Cheers! Springtime tips and fun facts from Paul, Kristen, and Dexter at Total Wine & More.
Garnishing your ham with pineapple? Pair it with a delicious Chardonnay to make their taste buds swirl.
Deviled eggs are even better when paired with a light, dry wine like a bubbly Prosecco or a Pinot Grigio.
For me, nothing beats recommending a great wine. And with such an extensive selection, I can help you find the perfect one in your budget.
Whether you're hosting or just bringing the wine, Total Wine & More has you covered with 8,000 wines, 3,000 spirits, and 2,500 beers at always low prices. Cheers!